the Inspector General of Police, Alhaji Mohammed Gambo, and the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Abdul Kadir Ahmed, had visited Babangida in the company of another guest. Shortly after the guest departed, Babangida's wife Miriam peeped through the window and noticed unusual troop movement outside. She walked over to her husband, told him to switch off the television, and pleaded for his urgent attention as something was occurring outside. On the face of it, there should have been no cause for alarm. Babangida's residence at Dodan Barracks was well protected. Over 300 soldiers from various units, such as infantry, artillery, armored corps, signals, and the medical corps were usually on guard duty there. Soldiers from the 26th Guards Battalion, 242nd Reconnaissance Battalion, and the Guards Garrison provided security for Dodan Barracks, the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, and State House, all on Ribadu Road, Ikoyi. Babangida sent his ADC, Bello Usman Kalabo, outside to find out what was happening, and that was the last time he saw Bello alive. Babangida remained in radio contact with Bello for a short while, but when Bello got outside, he was shot dead by mutinous soldiers. Bello's wife was separately arrested by the mutineers and taken to the FRCN till she was later rescued by loyalist soldiers. As Miriam Babangida clutched her 6-month-old daughter, a barrage of gunfire opened up as a group of mutineers attacked Babangida's living quarters in Dodan Barracks. At this point, it was evident that a violent coup was underway. The ideological arrowhead of the coup were Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Niam, Major Saliba Mukoro, Captain Hale Empere, and Captain Sowaribi Tolafari. Tolafari described Mukoro as the prime mover of the coup plot. Mukoro's job as a military assistant to the Director of Army Staff Duties and Plans gave him a panoramic view of happenings at Army headquarters. He has never denied his role as the plot's originator and claimed that he and his colleagues struck in order to prevent Babangida from constructing a Mobutu-like dictatorship in Nigeria. According to him, I concluded that something needed to be done. After extensive consultation with bright-minded military officers and civilians, we agreed beyond reasonable doubt that Babangida was fastly digging in, and if allowed to complete the digging in scheme, even the strongest army in the world would not be able to dig him out, and thus we have a Mobutu on our hands. We concluded then that Babangida has crossed the lines of sanity and that indeed the totality of his activities now constituted an internal aggression against the Nigerian state and must therefore be checked by all means necessary. And as such, on April 22nd, 1990, we launched a counter-offensive on Babangida and his junta. To ensure secrecy, the plotters kept their conspiratorial circle very small. They decided to limit participation in their plots to officers from Bendel, Cross Rivers, and River States, the main oil-producing states of the South. Only 3 soldiers taking part were not from those states. They were Orkar, Obasi, and Echendu. Even the participation of these officers were forced on the plotters because they held positions that made their cooperation essential. The plotters' deliberate restriction of the plot to kinsmen is a fascinating insight into the clannishness of military coups. Federal character does not exist in coup plots. Loyalty and trust are paramount, and officers serving in federal institutions fall back on primordial ethnic considerations. The plotters faced a trade-off between secrecy and the level of violence they could achieve. Expanding their plot beyond a narrow base may give them access to armored vehicles and other decisive key weapons. However, although infiltrating other units might have secured them heavier weapons, it carried the attendant risk that their plot could leak. Nonetheless, the plotters seemed to appreciate the importance of securing the involvement of the armored corps, as no coup in Nigeria had ever succeeded without the participation of the armored corps. The need for armored support convinced the plotters to recruit Major Gideon Gwazo Orkar, a 38-year-old officer of Tiv ethnicity, in the later stages of the plot. Contrary to popular misconception, Orkar was not one of the corps planners and was a late recruit. He was one of the only 2 non-Southern officers involved. Most of the plotters held staff appointments and were members of the military police, so they did not have command of any troops and had to raise fighting forces from elsewhere. To avoid attracting attention of Babangida's dreaded and omnipresent intelligence apparatus, they recruited fighting men from outside established military channels. The plot was unique in its use of civilian vehicles and ex-servicemen. The company premises of Chief Great Ogboru, a fishing magnate of Urhobo ethnicity, was covertly used by the plotters as a storage and recruitment base and tactical headquarters for the coup. Ogboru was a typical of the new breed of young millionaires that emerged in 1980s Nigeria. Although aged only 32, he was already a multimillionaire. He was also a friend of the former schoolmate of Major Mukoro and used his considerable finances to sponsor the plots. Ogboru bought brand new civilian vehicles for the plotters to use. He also bought a lorry which was painted black and was used to transport arms, ammunition, and equipment. To avoid attracting suspicion, the plotters purchased uniforms from their troops in small quantities, then had them sewn by tailors. They also carried out reconnaissance on their targets to observe the troop strength and routine of the guards on duty posts at a Ikeja cantonment and talk to the guards in order to study their routine and test their reactions. Captain Tolufari carried out a similar reconnaissance exercise at the Ojo cantonment and Mile 2 Signals Barracks to familiarize himself with his geography, armory location, security posts, and to observe the habits of the guards. The plotters recruited ex-soldiers under the guise of a security company started by some of them, including Major Mukoro. Several ex-servicemen were recruited as employees of the security company, but these men had no idea their recruitment was just a smokescreen for a coup. On the day of the coup, they were told to assemble at Ogboru's company premises, and after arriving were informed of the coup for the first time. They were then issued with arms and live ammunition. Ogboru attended the briefing at which operational orders for the coup were issued. The coup was brought forward with only 18 hours' notice after the plotters suspected that their plot had leaked. They were therefore faced with the daunting prospect of overthrowing the most security-conscious government in Nigeria's history with haste. Several soldiers, including Major Obaho, Captains Tolofari, Dakolo, and Idele, Lieutenants Ode and Okogun, and others raided the Mile 2 Signal Barracks Armory to obtain weapons and ammunition with which to execute the coup. In the preceding days, Empere and Tolofari had also bought large quantities of food, provisions, torches, batteries, ladders, crowbars, ropes, and communication equipment with which to sustain the mutineers for several days while they carry out the coup and stabilize the post-coup regime. The mutineers swung into action around 2 a.m. on April 22, 1990. Civilian vehicles belonging to Ogboru's company were used to transport the mutineers to their targets. Without using substantial numbers of regular soldiers, the plotters focused their attacks on the 9th Mechanized Infantry Brigade and Ojo Cantonment in Lagos, hoping that the commanders of those units would sit on the fence until the plotters had succeeded. Their key targets were Dodan Barracks, Ikeja Cantonment, Ojo Cantonment, and the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. Lieutenant Emmanuel Okekumatalo was the duty officer at the FRCN. He was instructed to facilitate the entry of a group of the mutineers led by Major Orkar to broadcast a speech pre-recorded by Major Orkar announcing the coup and overthrow of Babangida regime. At 5:25 a.m., the recorded speech by Major Orkar was broadcast. The AFRC was stated to have been dissolved and replaced with a new National Ruling Council, including a former Vice Head of State and one representative from each of the Nigerian Labour Congress, National Union of Journalists, National Bar Association, and the National Association of Nigerian Students. The summary of the core points of the speech were: 1. Orkar stated that this was not just another coup, but a well-conceived, planned and executed revolution for the marginalized, oppressed and enslaved peoples of the Middle Belt and the South with a view to freeing ourselves and children yet unborn from external slavery and colonization by a clique of this country. 2. Orkar accused Babangida of planning to install himself as Nigeria's life president. The plotters were aggrieved by the shabby and dishonorable treatment meted on the longest-serving Nigerian general in the person of General Bali, and the disgraceful and inexplicable removal of Commodore Ebitu Ukiwe, Professor Tam David West, Mr. Arrett Adams, and so on from office. 4. Orkar complained that even though the North contributes very little economically to the well-being of Nigeria, they have over the years served and presided over the supposedly national wealth derived in the main from Middle Belt and the southern parts of this country, while the people from this part of the country have been completely deprived from benefiting from the resources given to them by God. The most stunning announcement was the plotters' decision to expel the far north states of Bauchi, Borno, Katsina, Kano, and Sokoto from Nigeria. The speech stated that these states would not be readmitted into Nigeria unless Alhaji Majido was appointed Sultan of Sokoto. Citizens from the 5 states were suspended from any office they held in the southwest or middle belt. Any of them living in the middle belt or southwest were required to repatriate to the north within 1 week, but would be allowed to return and join the Federal Republic of Nigeria when the stipulated conditions are met. Similarly, citizens of southern or middle belt origin living in the exiled states were required to return to their states of origin until the mutineers' conditions are met. Soldiers from the exiled states were detained in the guard rooms. Although denunciation of the incoming regiment is normal in coup speeches, the Orkar coup was distinguished by the ferocity of his angry personalized rhetoric against the federal military government policies and its use of invectives against Babangida personally. The severity of the speech demonstrates the coup was not just a political act, but also a demonstration of animosity towards Babangida as a person. The speech ended with the customary imposition of a curfew, closure of borders, and the military and police personnel were ordered to remain in their barracks. For now, the mutineers were in control, and Orkar's speech was repeated intermittently. Lieutenant Echendu was the officer in charge of the armored personnel at Dodan Barracks. Echendu sent some soldiers to the FRCN at Ikoyi, while he himself was tasked with attacking Dodan Barracks using a combination of the fighting men brought from Ogboru's warehouse and troops under his command. The plotters told Echendu to put his turret down and blow the place apart, and he took to his mission as instructed. The mutineers heavily shelled Babangida's presidential complex and bedroom, nearly killing him. The roof of his living quarters was blown off. Babangida's guards returned fire, and both sides engaged each other in a fierce fight, with heavy shelling. Babangida claimed that he initially ignored pleas from his guard and the director of the SSS to immediately evacuate Dodan Barracks. However, he was eventually persuaded to evacuate by the forceful persistence of Captain Kasim Omowa. Babangida and his family were smuggled out of Dodan Barracks via a secret escape tunnel that was unknown to the mutineers. About 5 loyal soldiers drove him to a safe house in Surulere, where they hid him. Neither Babangida nor his wife ever revealed their escape route or the location of their safe house. Author Karl Mayer claimed that Babangida broke down after escaping from Dodan Barracks, and that when he first spoke to Abacha, he refused to disclose his location for fear that Abacha was behind the coup. Lieutenant General Sani Abacha became a pivotal figure and played a role similar to that of Major General Aguiyi Ironsi and Lieutenant General T.Y. Danjuma in their suppression of the January 1966 and February 1976 coups respectively. Second Lieutenant Umukoro was the officer in charge of Lieutenant General Abacha's security detail. The plotters recruited him to monitor and keep them appraised of Abacha's movements. Abacha was not in his official residence at Flagstaff House. The mutineers shot up the house in search for him but could not find him as he was hiding in a bedroom concealed behind a paneled wall. Alerted by the shooting, his driver attempted to drive away and was shot and wounded by the mutineers. After the mutineers left, Abacha sent for an armored vehicle and more troops to provide reinforcing guards for him at the guest house. He then called his son Ibrahim, who picked him up in a civilian car and drove him to Flagstaff House, where he rendezvoused with Babangida and other key officers. Abacha started phoning key installations and rousing their commands to counter-attack the mutineers. His task was made easier by the realization that the coup was completely localized to Lagos and that the mutineers had not attacked any other locations. Abacha also contacted Colonels Raji Razaki and Ishaya Bameyi. The army's realization that Abacha was still alive dramatically changed indecisive soldiers' action to the coup. The Vasa coup had taught the lesson that a fence was a dangerous place to sit on when it came to demonstrating loyalty to Babangida. Officers determined that it was safer to deal with the devil they knew rather than deal with a certain fate under the obscure mutineers. The GOC 82nd Division in Enugu, Major General Oladipo Dia, and the military governor of Lagos State, Colonel Raji Razaki, went on air to broadcast condemnation of the coup. The GOC of 1st Division Kaduna, Colonel Dantoso Mohammed, also disassociated his division from the coup. Lieutenant Colonel G.T. Zidon went out dressed in sportswear to gather intelligence about the mutineers' strength. When he reached the FRCN, he promised the mutineers his cooperation and left, pledging to return with reinforcements and ammunition for them. He later returned to the FRCN with loyalist troops, and they were authorized to destroy the FRCN building if that's what it took to dislodge the mutineers. Colonel Ishaya Bameyi also led an offensive against the mutineers. Loyalist troops engaged the mutineers in fierce fighting using heavy weapons, artillery, and armored vehicles normally employed in battlefields rather than city centers. 200 of the mutineers finally surrendered after running out of ammunition, following nearly 12 hours of fighting. SSS facilities were used to jam Orkar's broadcast off the airwaves, and around 11:57 a.m. on April 22, 1990, Lieutenant Colonel G.T. Zidon made a broadcast announcing the coup's suppression. Lieutenant General Abacha followed up with a characteristically terse and to-the-point broadcast amplifying the coup's failure and condemning the mutineers, whom he referred to as a national security nuisance. Later in the day, Babangida addressed the nation to confirm his survival, the coup's failure, and to praise his loyal forces for suppressing the coup. He was especially grateful to Abacha, whom he referred to and praised by name. The January 1966 and February 1976 coup were marked by the demonization of the ethnic groups the plotters came from, and in the case of the January 1966 coup, Igbos as an ethnic group were held collectively responsible, so everyone knew what to expect since most of the suspected mutineers were from the Niger Delta region in the south. Soldiers from Bendel State were suspected and hunted. Babangida appointed a special investigation panel headed by Brigadier Rufus Kupolati. The FMG declared several suspects wanted and offered a 150,000 naira reward for information which could lead to a fugitive's arrests. The rewards were subsequently increased to 500,000. However, most of the coup's core planners hid in safe houses before fleeing the country. Unable to get their hands on Great Ogboru, the FMG instead sought to destroy his business empire. The FMG froze his accounts, seized his properties, and auctioned off fish valued at 40 million naira found in the cold room at his warehouse. When unable to arrest genuine suspects, security forces arrested their relatives, wives, and girlfriends. This method was a crude form of pressure akin to hostage-taking. Some of the people arrested included Great Ogboru's sisters, Major Mukoro's pregnant wife along with her children, his father and uncle. Major Orkar's brothers and stepmother were also arrested, along with the wives of Majors Cletus Obaha, Gilbert Edoja, and Captain Ben Oziegbe. Babangida's principal staff officer, Colonel Anthony Ukwu, announced the start of the suspect's trial on May 21, 1990, with Major General Ike Nwachukwu as the chairman of the Special Military Tribunal. The trial took place at the Brigade of Guards headquarters on Kofa Abayomi Street in Lagos. Although the SMT was to try 82 defendants, the trial commenced with several suspects still at large. Some defendants were brought to the SMT bearing battle wounds. The leadership viewed that the senior officers did not do enough to stop the coup led Babangida to authorize a mass retirement of senior officers in August 1990. The trials ended on Wednesday, July 18, 1990, and the SMT sentenced 42 defendants to death by firing squad, jailed 9 and released 31. The AFRC confirmed the death sentences and the condemned men were executed by firing squad on July 27, 1990. Of the tried and subsequently executed, only Emperor was among the core planners of the coup. Most of the defendants were junior soldiers who were accosted in the middle of the night and ordered at gunpoint to take part in a coup they knew nothing about. The sponsors and planners of the coup, such as Ogboru, Mukoro, Niam, and Tolofari, all escaped, and some are still alive till today. The Babangida government executed more soldiers than any other government in Nigeria's history. Of the 117 people executed for coup plotting in Nigeria's history, 78 were executed by the Babangida regime.